This right here is the KSO Show, your home for K-State coverage. Stay current on what's happening in the Wildcat world of sports. By the end, you might want to tell your friends about us. Or not. But hey, you should. Let's get it.
It is time for a one-man edition of the KSO Show, which is brought to you, as always, by Tallgrass Tap House at 320 Points in Manhattan. We're there every Thursday night through basketball season doing our show, typically 8 o'clock. We'll let you know if that ever changes, but go check them out. Also want to reference and thank our other sponsors, Harry's and Bourbon and Baker. I know Nats went to Bourbon and Baker Friday, and she was there a long time, and I was really jealous. So a great place, all great places. Appreciate the sponsors. This edition, of course, will in large part preview Monday night's game against Kansas as K-State looks to basically eliminate the Jayhawks from the Big 12 race after KU loses by 29 Saturday night at Texas Tech. It's pretty rare you get a Big 12 Saturday where Kansas State wins by 39, Kansas loses by 29, and the Wildcats take a full two-game lead over the Jayhawks. Just one game still over Texas Tech, who looks like easily the best competitor for K-State's Big 12 title hopes. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. I've asked for questions from members of the foundation, which people so kindly responded to, so I'm going to go through those. I'm going to do one-on-one, or one by one, and I'm going to take some time with this today because it's just me. I've got nobody else I'm making wait here and talk with me, so it could be a lengthy show depending on how the questions go and how well I get through them. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to share my work. If you ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I'm going to go look it up and tell you. So we'll see how it goes. First question on the board today from Panjandrum asks, which Kansas player outside of Dedrick Lawson is most critical to bottle up if K-State hopes to win in Lawrence, and who draws that assignment? It's a really good first question. Gets me off on kind of the path I wanted to start with this podcast, which is really talking a lot about the K-State-KU game tomorrow night now in Fieldhouse. To me, the answer to this is Devon Dotson. I don't know if he's playing as well as a Fran Fraschilla or others hype him up to be playing, but he is playing very well. He is playing at a borderline all Big 12 second team type level. He's a very good player, a very talented freshman for Kansas, and he certainly has gotten better. I think he is the key. You could probably argue, if you really tried, even though I don't know if I'd agree with myself even as I say this, you could argue he's the most important guy to slow down because he's going to handle the ball so much where a guy like Lawson, has to count on others to get it entered to him. K-State should have success doubling him like they did the previous matchup in Bramlage. So he's their best player, and you're right to say he's the guy. But I think you could make a reasonable case that slowing down Dotson will be the key. And to me, I use Barry Brown on him. He's obviously K-State's best perimeter defender. He can bother Dotson with his length, his athleticism, his experience, all those things. And I think we'll get more to it, I'm sure, as the questions go along. But in case we don't, I'll hit on it now. I think in an interesting way, Marcus Garrett returning, I wouldn't say it helps K-State because it certainly makes KU a better team. He's one of their 5, 4, maybe even 3 best players. He's a very big piece for them. But specifically for this K-State-KU matchup, there's part of me who likes K-State getting a chance to see a smaller KU team with a guy like Garrett out there instead of Lightfoot or even McCormick. Again, Garrett's a better player than those guys. He'll be a factor in this game. He's a great defender. He can finish at the rim. But there's part of me that likes it because I think K-State can leave Dean on Garrett without really being concerned about him terribly on the offensive end, or you could use Dean even on a Quentin Grimes who's just going to stand out there and shoot. There's a lot you can do. My point is that with Garrett on the floor now, I think K-State has a chance to really dominate the glass against a smaller KU team. But either way, the question was asking what player is important to dominate, or at least to slow down, and it would be, Devon Dotson. Next question from BarnesCat89 says, when was the last time a Kansas State team had this much confidence heading to Allen Fieldhouse? I've thought about this, for a while and tried to figure out when's the last time, that this setting has been taking place as far as where K-State and KU are, or when the last time this happened. I'm actually going to the Google machine right now and looking at the series history myself because I want to see if there's a game that pops out to me. Let's do Kansas State, Kansas basketball series history. If there's a game that pops out as one where maybe K-State would have had, this much confidence going into it. And it's going to be hard for me to find one in, my memory, at least my recent memory. Of course, there's times where, you think about to Bruce Weber's first season at K-State where K-State shared the Big 12 title with KU. So, that would be one. But again, the confidence level wouldn't be the same. So I've pulled up the series history and I made us leave it up. because of other questions that asked for it. And hey, it's nice to see on Wikipedia the last one, if you're a K-State fan, goes to K-State. So again, trying to look for wins, wins in Lawrence, games in Lawrence, where I think it would have been similar from a confidence level, and it's just hard to do. I know the last sweep for K-State, I have to scroll back quite a ways to find. Looks like it was 19. The last time, well, I mean, I'm stumbling because, I mean, these are two different seasons, but K-State did win 2 in a row over Kansas to end the 93 season in Kansas City at the Big 8 tournament, it would have been, it looks like. And then they beat them in Lawrence in 94 when KU was number 1, 68-64. So 2 different seasons, and KU was number 1. So K-State certainly wasn't as confident going into that game. But that's the last time K-State won 2 in a row, or at least the last time K-State headed to Lawrence, having beaten KU in the last matchup. But that's over the course of 2 seasons. So to try to answer the question, maybe never. I mean, at least not in the modern era. When I say modern era, I mean since the advent of, the internet and those kind of things, has K-State gone to Lawrence with this much confidence? KU Chupa asks, will Bruce play his zone D until the first media timeout? What do you say are the pros and cons of doing so? He won't. Now, I get the question, and if you're looking at pros and cons, the pros would be, do you want to try to stay out of foul trouble early in the game? I imagine that's what this question is kind of based on, and perhaps playing in the zone will limit a chance for a guy like Mack or whoever to pick up 2 fouls early. But that's not what K-State does. K-State's a man defense. They're one of the best, if not the best, man defense teams in college basketball. It's what they're going to do. They may throw some zone at Kansas at some point in this game. In fact, I'd probably be a little surprised if they don't, but I don't think they're going to start off with it. Panjandrum asks, when is the last time KU and K-State both played at Allen Fieldhouse when both teams were ranked? This darn Wikipedia page that I'm referencing for all my knowledge doesn't have rankings on it. I mean, I'm guessing, maybe that matchup in Weber's first year in Lawrence, maybe both teams were ranked. Of course, meaning that K-State tied for the Big 12 that year. I'm not sure at that point in the season if K-State was ranked, but that's the last one that maybe comes to mind. But man, it's had to have been an awfully long time, because if you take that one away, perhaps Frank had some where they were both ranked, but I don't remember them being that way. So yeah, a great question, because I don't know the answer to it, and I would have to guess it's been at least since that Big 12 title season where K-State shared it with KU and Bruce Weber's first season. Maybe even I'm sure perhaps even further back than that. KSU Burke's got a few, and so I'm going to slow down now and just read through these and answer them. The first asks if this is the biggest K-State KU game you can remember, considering what's at stake. Yes and no. I mean, it is, in a lot of reasons, because you can snap the streak, you can sweep Kansas, you can take a huge step towards at least cementing a share of the Big 12 title. So it's a monster game, and I think it's the biggest one that I can remember, at least in my adult life. Now, if I wanted to play devil's advocate and argue, I could go back to any number of those games. When, again, in Weber's first season where K-State lost 3, they played in the finals of the Big 12 tournament. Had K-State won that, it would have felt huge, because the Wildcats could have said, hey, we tied Kansas in the season for the league title and beat them in the tournament to win the tournament crown. So that one was big, of course, but I don't think it was as big as this one. You could look at both regular season matchups from that season too, and in theory, say if K-State had won either of them, they would have snapped KU's streak 6 years ago. So those were big games too. But I'm with you. In general, I think all things considered, this is as big of a game in the series as I can remember. So it says to pick the rest of the season and who wins the title. He's asking me to look at K-State's schedule, Tech's schedule, and Kansas's schedule. So let's just go with K-State first and what that does. And this will be a little bit of a spoiler. K-State's first game, of course, is at Kansas. I have decided to pick K-State to win this game. I thought about it a lot over the last 24 hours. Well, really since the end of the Oklahoma State game. I had entered the day imagining that I would project KU to win Monday night in Lawrence, but I just don't believe they're the better team out of the two teams. They won't be as well rested as K-State because of the timeliness of their game, the travel they have to do, and how much they had to play their starters, which is an interesting topic otherwise, against Texas Tech. I just like K-State in that game. So I would have K-State winning out. If that happens, I'd have K-State winning at KU, beating Baylor at home, winning at TCU, and beating OU at home. None of those are gimmies at this point. Baylor has shown a lot of important things. TCU I thought was close to done, but they get Kwatnoy back and get a big win on Saturday, so TCU's still alive. And Oklahoma is the one team I'd been saying for a few weeks I thought wasn't done winning games in the Big 12. I think they'll beat Kansas and Norman as well, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think K-State will beat them too. I mean, so I have K-State winning out. And if that happens, at that point, you're looking at, what is that, a 15-3 league mark? You would be guaranteed to be the solo Big 12 champion. Texas Tech can't catch you at that number. Kansas can't catch you, of course. So that's what it would leave you at. I do think, if you're a gambling type, it's probably more likely. I'd probably pick K-State, as contradictory as this will sound, to go 14-4, just because I think out of the at KU and at TCU games, they probably drop one. But if I'm just going game by game, I have them winning both. So that's why I'm at 14-4. Texas Tech's interesting. Home versus Oklahoma State should be fine. They have to play at TCU just like K-State does. I also think Tech should win that game, so I'll give it to them. They have Texas at home. I don't know if Texas will have Kerwin Roach or not. It may not matter. Texas Tech has appeared virtually unbeatable at home in Big 12 play. And then they do finish at Iowa State, which will be an interesting game because where will the Cyclones be at this point? I don't think they'll be in the league race. And Burke, you left them off here, which I think was correct because I don't project them as one of the top competitors for this. But that's a tough one. I think Tech, very much like K-State, I think they'll lose a game. I think they'll lose either at TCU or at Iowa State. But if I'm going game by game, I'm picking them to win all four of those. That has me with Texas Tech at 14-4. I've got K-State at 15-3 and Tech at 14-4. I don't think that's what's going to happen, if that makes any sense, but that's the way the games project out right now. Kansas, I have losing to K-State at home. I think they'll win at Oklahoma State. I think they'll lose at Oklahoma, and I think they'll beat Baylor at home. So that's 2-2 down the stretch for KU, which would put the Jayhawks, I believe, at 11-7. They would end up not really a factor in the league race because I would end up with K-State at 15-3, Texas Tech at 14-4, Kansas at 11-7. The game, of course, that could flip all that on its head would be if KU can win at home, they'll be favored to do so against K-State Monday night in Allen. Even if that happens, if you flip those two results, I then have K-State at 14-4, tied with Tech at 14-4. Kansas still out of the mix. I believe I would be sitting at, 12-6 at that point for the Jayhawks. What bench player needs to play well for K-State to win in Lawrence, or does just the starting five have to do what they do, a la at Texas? Yeah, I mean, K-State could win this game without a major performance from the bench. It'd be easier to have a guy like Mike McGurl come off the bench and give you 8 or 10 points. Maybe Sean Neal Williams extends what he was doing at Oklahoma State and gives you a couple of baskets. So no doubt about it. But if the question is what bench player needs to play, like you asked it, and then you alluded to yourself, I don't think any one bench player needs to play well for K-State to win, but it'd be a huge boost. Lastly, how much fun will the Big 12 tournament be? Do you expect a large gathering of K-State fans? I'm thinking about going again. I think it's going to be a great time. We're all going to be there, of course. We've already kind of secured our lodging there, have our credentials. We're going to have a big KSO staff there. I've talked to the Boscos, the Bosco boys. I hope you're listening to their podcast. If you're not, we're going to do some sort of group gathering in Kansas City. We don't have the details hammered out, but we certainly will. And I would think a ton of K-State fans should be in Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. And we'll be good about advertising what we're doing. Maybe we have more than one get-together. Who knows? If K-State's there a few days, maybe we can have a couple of nights where we tell fans where we're at, and hopefully we get a chance to interact with you all, but it will be a great time. Good Now Cat asks, outside of the three seniors, Brown, Wade, and Stokes, who must have a monster game in Allen Fieldhouse for K-State to walk out with the win? So different question than Burke's, but similar in some ways to where I could tell you, if I wanted, that nobody else has to have a monster game for K-State to win. I think they're going to need some more help, of course, but I could see a scenario where if Barry Brown gets his 20 that he gets seemingly every Big 12 game, if Dean Wade plays a little bit better than he has as of late and gives you 15 or 20, then you get 10 or 12 from Stokes, you're already at 60 points or so, 55, 60 points when you get to that, and you're not going to need a ton of points to win this game. So it is possible for K-State to win without somebody else going off for a big game. But if you want to ask for somebody else, I think there's really two guys to pick from, the other two starters, Xavier Sneed or McCall Muane. I think Max staying out of foul trouble will have a huge impact, but X is the guy who can turn the game on its head by hitting shots, getting to the basket, and putting K-State up perhaps early in this one, which would create an interesting environment. So I would say Xavier Sneed's the answer to that question, but it does, kind of bring to the point like we were saying before the game of Manhattan, this is not a game where K-State's got to play an A-plus game to win. This is not a K-State-KU matchup where K-State has to be perfect to get the win. K-State's probably the better team. That is negated a lot by playing at Allen Fieldhouse where Kansas hasn't lost this year. But I think if K-State plays a B-plus game, they'll probably have a pretty good chance to get out of there. A-minus will certainly do it. So we'll see what happens, but that's what's interesting to me is it may not take some superhuman effort from anybody outside of the standard contributors for K-State to win. DC Cat 87. I like this question because it at least leads me to a thought. Would you be tempted to start Trice or Levi over Mac just to avoid foul trouble from him? I could see whistles trying to set the tone early. You're right. There probably will be whistles trying to set the tone early, and I think Mac is the most likely guy to pick those up. But I just think you can't pull him out of fear of that. That's very much the same. You know, people get upset about pulling players with 2 fouls in the first half or 3 early in the second. You know, you're basically fouling out your own guy before you do it if you don't start him. I'm not actually a huge hater of the 2 foul seat in the first half and the 3 early in the second, as long as you're going to come out of it in occasions when you need to, like Bruce has done a couple times as of late and perhaps learn some things about it. But no, I would start Mac. I will say, though, and this is probably going to contradict myself, but I've said this in games more than once when I'm watching it, you know, to Nelson or to Derek or to Flando on the sidelines, where if Mac gets 3 minutes in without a foul, I say pull him right now. He's, you know, you're playing with the odds are, I guess he is due to get one, so get him out of there. So I can see that. I may not play Mac a bunch of minutes early if he gets away with the first 2 or 3. I might get him out and see how Austin Trice handles the environment and see if he can help you on the boards there. But I'm definitely starting Mac. So KSU fella says, we win, and now it's Tuesday, so you call your shot. Who stepped up and delivered? Who was the X factor? Love this kind of question. I love it when somebody just gives me the specifics, and I can just talk from there because I don't have to think as much. So if K-State wins, this is going to be the most boring answer possible, but it's going to be Barry Brown. I think he is getting close, in my opinion, to locking up the Big 12 Player of the Year. Jarrett Culver is in that race and should be. He's been very, very good throughout the season. If Kansas were to get back in this league race and perhaps tie for it, I could understand the case being made for Dedrick Lawson. I'd be fine with it at that point, I guess. But Barry Brown has been the best player in the league. And if and when, as your post suggests, K-State beats KU in the Allen Fieldhouse Monday night, it'll be because Barry Brown had another big game. Defensively, offensively, probably hit some shots down the stretch, and he's going to be the guy. There are other guys it could be. I would love to see it be Dean Wade. As you know, I'm still in a thought from Chris Nelson, but he would love to see Dean have, you know, his moment. There's definitely moments you can think of for Barry and some of the other guys, and Dean too. He's had a lot of great moments, but that one defining moment you're looking for. So it'd be fun to see Dean Wade get a shot late to win that game, but I've got to go with Barry Brown. The Nooch Baloney says it'll be McCollum Wayne, who was the X factor. I think he's got a chance to be a very, very, very important player in this game because, again, we talk about needs to set of foul trouble, and K-State still doesn't have great depth. Neither does Kansas. So whatever team can avoid foul trouble better should help. And I think K-State has a shot to really hurt KU on the boards if they're going to play small with Garrett, who's a good player, and probably makes them a better team. But if they're going to play small with Garrett, I think Mac and Dean have to be big on the boards. Kansas Wildcat 11 asked what time the team arrives and what is pregame schedule, including where and what time on the pregame meal. I'm just going to be totally honest. I have no idea the answer to any of those questions. Typically, if they're doing unique travel, we kind of get told or tipped off as to when they leave or when they're going to get there and that kind of stuff. For going over to Lawrence, I'm just speculating some. You know, the game's at 8 o'clock. They probably don't want to, you know, get to Lawrence and hang around forever. So I imagine they'll leave Manhattan, maybe 4, maybe 5, get into Allen Fieldhouse around 6 o'clock, get changed and start shooting. I don't think they're going to want to spend a whole day walking around, you know, Lawrence, Kansas. So my guess is they'll leave as late as they reasonably can and still have time to get properly warmed up for the game. D4 Neely is up next. How about, I'm just going to read the whole post. I think it made me laugh. How about a tuck primer for KSU fans to step up their social media game appropriately? His suggestion, not only follow myself, thank you, Derek Young and Taylor Bratt on Twitter, but also turn on alert notifications for those 3. From my experience, if any of the, quote, big 3 retweet something, it's an easy follow for tucks and all to retweet and like. Your thoughts on that setup and suggestions beyond that would be helpful to answer CK's call to get our fan base more active. I love the followers, man. You know, Derek's would too. Taylor Bratt's a great follow. Van Malone's a great follow. And they're right. You hit yourself a retweet on one of those from one of those guys. Maybe not me, but Derek or Brad or Van Malone or whoever. You'll start to get some followers yourself. Yeah, I think K-State's social media game from the K-State side has gotten better, and the fans are doing great. But I will say, you know, if you kind of catch yourself noticing interaction from other schools on social media, it feels a little bit bigger. I think K-State fans are catching up to this. There's a huge group of fans who are great about it. I just got an email from Kurtz, and it stalled me. I'll get back to him in a second. He can probably wait. But yeah, follow those guys. Follow us. We'd love you to subscribe to our YouTube page. It has nothing to do with what he's talking about. It's just a plug. If you're not doing it, it helps us. Hit subscribe on our YouTube page and follow all those names he listed on social media. Fuzzy Dunlop 69 says, which order should I go in with my K-State jerseys Monday, Tuesday at school? I think this is a very good question. I have a diehard KU fan as a student and one of my baseball players. Do I go with a black Magruder jersey tomorrow, a.k.a. Monday, then hit him with the lavender as the haymaker for Tuesday after they win? Or do you wear lavender tomorrow for the good luck and then rock the Magruder on Tuesday? He wants anyone to chime in on this, so hopefully some of the board can help too, pardon me. But I've thought about this as I've read it. To me, it's easy. I think it's your first option. I think you wear the black Magruder jersey tomorrow, which is Monday. One, I also own that jersey. But I think you wear that because, the black kind of signifies being a road team. K-State will probably wear the purples tomorrow night because they've done so virtually all year on the road in Big 12 play with a couple of exceptions. Against big opponents, they've tended to wear purple, it seems like. So I think they'll wear the purples. Point is, the black still feels like the road team. It feels like you're part of the team. You're wearing the black. It's a road game day. So black jersey, lavender to celebrate on Tuesday, and man, it's going to be annoying to them. That's what I would go with. Black, then lavender. JWR3 asks, is it true that KU did not practice for Texas Tech last week, but rather K-State, seemingly willing to forfeit the Tech game? I don't have a good, I'm not trying to be cute here, I'm just being honest. I don't have like a good source in the Kansas staff to know what they did or didn't do in practice last week, but I think that would be absolutely stunning. I think there's no way that happened. I know people talking about it or rumoring it. The Texas Tech game was a monster game for Kansas. They desperately needed to win it to have a chance to win the league outright and keep their streak going that manner. They needed to win it to have a really good shot at sharing. To me, there is no chance that they spent any extra time preparing for K-State. They may have seen Texas Tech as a better team and on the road. So I think Kansas tried to win that game as hard as they could. I think they played their players too many minutes. They were out of that game at halftime. I could understand playing 5 more minutes in the second half to see if you can whittle it under 20 or get it down to 17 or 15. They never got close to doing that but left their guys in. So I think they burned some needless minutes with their starters and their rotation guys for that Tech game. And they didn't. Taking advantage is a funny term. You can't take advantage of losing by 30, but they could have made the best of it by getting some more rest, and they didn't even do that. They just left their guys out there and took a beating, which I think will be good for K-State Monday night. Neilio kind of hits on something that I've been suggesting in my previous answers. He hasn't heard them. I'm just now recording this pod, of course, so he didn't take this from me. I'm probably taking it from him after he read it. But he said, honestly, isn't it about Xavier's performance in these big games that's paramount to us winning them? I get that Barry and Dean have to step up as well, but Snead is truly our X factor. I see Dotson. I'm going to separate the two questions there. Yeah, you're right, and I think you're totally right. He is, I don't know if it's John Kurtz who said it. Maybe it's Soren Petro who told John Kurtz, who told me like a game of telephone, but the belief is just that, yeah, he's K-State's ceiling. Xavier Snead is. When Xavier Snead is making shots, he doesn't have to be perfect like he was in the second half, against West Virginia. But when he is making, 30, 37, 38, 40% of his threes, when he's getting into the basket and finishing, when he's rebounding and defending like he can, then K-State's a Final Four type team. Like, they're really that good. K-State's to be the best team in the Big 12, and they could beat anybody in the country. When X isn't playing well, K-State just becomes a good team, who can beat a lot of teams, but they are not nearly as strong. So I'm totally with you. And if Xavier Snead has a night tomorrow night in Lawrence where he gets 15, gets 20, and shoots it well, K-State would win. Neilio says that he sees Dotson becoming an offensive threat more and more each game. Don't you start with Barry covering him? Yes and yes. Dotson is a very good player. He's gotten better throughout the season, absolutely. To me, it's a no-brainer. I'm putting Barry Brown on him and going from there, making other people beat you. Kansas has other good players, of course. They have a load of 4- and 5-star recruits, McDonald's All-Americans. Despite their depth issues, they still have a lot of very talented players. Other guys can beat you, but I'd rather see Quentin Grimes hit a bunch of threes or Marcus Garrett be forced to take long shots as opposed to Devon Dotson getting to the rim and hurting you that way. Purple Haze asks, which of the 3 scenarios is most likely in your opinion? 1, a slow start for K-State, down by double digits and playing catch-up with foul trouble by the second TV timeout. Close 50-50 game in the end. So that's a scene you've seen a lot. He's saying K-State falls behind big early, lots of foul trouble, kind of gets back in it, The difference is that 50-50 shot at the end. K-State's had that the last 2 years. Typically with bad starts in Lawrence, they don't get a shot at the end, but that's been the case the last 2 years. They've still had a real chance to win both game in Lawrence. Number 2, fast start for K-State, up high single digits throughout, weathering a comeback push by Kansas, but closing out with a 10 or 15-point win. Or number 3, a back-and-forth classic from the tip-off down to the wire, a 1 to 3 point game. All possible scenarios well laid out, but I'm taking number 3. I think it's going to be a great game. I don't think either team gets a significant lead in this game. I think if K-State does, when I say significant, I mean 9 points, double digits in that range. I think if K-State were to get up 10, the game would be over. I think Kansas would lose confidence after what happened to them Saturday night. I think that arena would turn into a place that instead of supporting Kansas would feel incredibly nervous and not be helping Kansas feel like they're in a good spot in that game. So I think if K-State's able to get off to a big lead, they will win, and perhaps comfortably is too strong, but they'll be in control. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think Kansas is too proud, too talented, too good of a home court advantage to let that happen. I think it's a close game throughout, but K-State's experience late is the difference. I have K-State winning 70-69, a 1-point win in Lawrence. I think it'll be that close. I think it'll be similar to the last 2 years from a score perspective, but this time K-State, unlike with this Svi Mikhailuk travel and unlike Barry Brown's miss, K-State will get a shot to win it late and win the game against Kansas. At least is how I see it. Purple Haze also asks to rank the key individual defensive matchups in order of importance. Who do we prioritize disrupting? Number 1, and I talked about this earlier, but I'm still going back and forth in my head. I'm still going to say number 1 is Lawson. He's their best player. He's their player of the year candidate. He's the guy you have to stop. I just think it's quote-unquote easier to do. Easy is a wrong word, but I think he's a guy that if K-State decides they want to double him, they can and not get, really, really hurt doing so. So I think they can limit him, but he's still number 1. Dotson number 2. Those are the 2 tier 1 guys for me that you have to worry about, and there's a big drop-off after that. I use Barry Brown, though, of course, on Devon Dotson, and hopefully you can slow him down with the best defender in the Big 12. Beyond those 2, I think there's a big drop-off. Of course, Abaji can really hurt you shooting the 3, but if Xavier Sneed's locked in, he should be okay there. Marcus Garrett's, of course, an interesting matchup. I would think he could end up with perhaps Dean Wade on him. Quentin Grimes, a guy with a load of talent, incredibly highly rated recruit. I probably use Cam Stokes on him. The size difference is an issue, but it wasn't really the last time they played, and Cam's quick hands can bother Quentin Grimes and make him really fear doing anything other than taking spot-up threes. So it's those top 2, and then probably Abaji third. After that, they're all important. They're all good players, but those top 3 of Lawson, Dotson, and a little bit of a drop to Abaji are the 3 I think you really have to worry about for K-State. And I would use Mac on Lawson. I would use Barry on Dotson. I would use X on Abaji. And, of course, guys like Dean and Cam can, of course, help. Purple Haze also says that Dean seemed to have limited mobility against Oklahoma State. Is the healing going slow, or was he playing down a level, protecting the foot because he wasn't really needed? I think it could be a little bit of both. I think Dean Wade's always going to battle this foot issue, foot, ankle, whatever you want to call it, probably throughout the rest of his career at K-State, but that doesn't mean it has to be a huge factor in how he can play. I think K-State got up so fast, so quick against Oklahoma State, and it was clear 3 minutes into that game K-State was going to win. I think K-State and Dean Wade probably took it down a notch from an intensity perspective. I don't think Dean Wade's foot's going to be a serious factor at Kansas, I guess is what I want to say. I think it'll be a factor. Him and Cam Stokes are never going to be 100% healthy, but nobody is this time of year. And I don't know that Cam and Dean are incredibly unique as far as their health. What I mean is I don't think they're significantly more unhealthy than other players through the league. We just know more about it. I bet there's guys on K-State's roster who are really battling just as much as those guys. It's just not so apparent and obvious to see. Going to keep going here at Refresh to bring some more questions in. That guy 2016 says, if needed, do you see S&W, that's Sean Neal Williams or Austin Trice, being able to step up and have an impact in the game tomorrow? Not really, and I love both those guys. I mean, especially Sean Neal Williams. I've continued to say how I think he's going to be a star for K-State, even though he struggled some this year. Austin Trice I feel really good for, and I think he has a chance to be a contributor going forward and not just a guy. But I'd be surprised, if either are ready to make a big difference against Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse. I'm not taking away from what they did against Oklahoma State because I thought it was important and of great value to those guys. But as as the guy asking the question and listening to the answer, it's a different deal, playing against Kansas's scholarship starter guys in Allen Fieldhouse as opposed to playing against Oklahoma State's walk-ons at home. But a great step for those guys. I imagine at least Sean will see the floor in Allen. Austin Trice probably will too. And if they can provide a boost and I'm wrong, it'd be a huge difference. KSU 1017 or 1017. Does it serve as motivation that the three teams K-State leads in the conference race are all well above us in the rankings? AP, coaches, net, and projected seeds. Yes, it does. They're not going to say it publicly. You're never going to hear them say it publicly, but I can tell you for a fact that K-State's coaches and players are very aware of where they're ranked, of where they're seated in these projections, of where the teams they feel like they're better than in the Big 12 and have proven to be better than in the Big 12 are projected higher than them, and they're absolutely using it as motivation. This is an experienced team, as you've heard me say probably 25 times in this pod already, so they don't need a lot of these kind of things, but they're not going to ignore them. And if their team and coaching staff, meaning K-State's, gets a little bit riled up about these rankings and it can help, I think it's a good thing for K-State. KSU Burke 54 asked me to defend K-State's net ranking. I assume that means to defend where it is, and I sure as heck can't because I think it is. I think it's ridiculous. It was Born Ploopers in another thread who laid out, I thought, the best hypocriticality, I'm just going to keep trying to think of words for that, in a different thread comparing K-State and Iowa State. I believe he said K-State was 13 spots behind Iowa State in the net. This is despite having a better Q1 record with more wins in the Q1, a better Q2 record with more wins in the Q2, and then having played fewer quadrant 4 teams than Iowa State. You split the season series with them. You're 3 games ahead of him in the Big 12, and you're 13 spots behind him in the net. So I can't defend the net because it's ridiculous. Last and most definitely least, Emaw 1986, old hacksaw Jim Duggan himself asked, how upset am I with the rankings? I'm still pretty upset, if I'm going to be honest with you. I don't play for K-State, fortunately for both parties. I'm not on the team. I'm just a guy covering them, so I shouldn't have emotional investment or interest in it. I just don't like them. I think it's been ridiculous mostly all season long. I think K-State could be the most underrated team from a top 25 perspective in college basketball. I believe K-State to be more of a top 12, top 10 type team right now, and their record is one of a team that should be ranked there as well. I know why they're not, and I know what you're sitting here thinking. Tulsa, Texas A&M, those are 2 top 100 RPI teams that you played 2 road games with and lost to. They're bad losses. They're not terrible losses. They're not embarrassing losses. They shouldn't have happened. K-State should have won them, but I think K-State's being held to a different standard where people are going to hammer them for those losses. Where a team like Kansas, who's played a great schedule, KU's deserves what they have for the most part, but Kansas lost at West Virginia. That's a terrible loss. If you're going to call losses to A&M and Tulsa terrible losses. So I think different schools are evaluated in different ways. I think K-State should be ranked in the top 15 at minimum right now. It doesn't matter. I know there's other people listening to that and saying it doesn't matter. You're right. It doesn't. In college basketball, your ranking does not influence your ability to win a national championship like it does in college football. So it doesn't matter. But I'll tell you, the players don't like it. The players would rather be ranked where they deserved. The coaches would rather be ranked when they deserve. So you can say it doesn't matter, and you're probably right. It matters to those kids, and I think everyone wants to get what they deserve in life and something they've worked for. And if they believe they've risen this program to a point over the last 4 years through their efforts that this should be a top 10 team and they want to get called a top 10 team, I don't see a problem with that. But they can take care of business even more and prove it one more time tomorrow night in Lawrence as K-State faces KU. Will be there. Myself, Grant Flanders, will be in Allen Fieldhouse to provide tons of coverage, video, photos, quotes, all sorts of reaction from the game. Really appreciate our sponsors. That would be Tallgrass Tap House at 320 Points in Manhattan. You can see us there every Thursday for live recorded, at least, versions of the KSO show. Also, make sure to check out Harry's and Bourbon and Baker, both located on Points as well, and kind sponsors of the KSO show. Thanks to Grant Flanders for listening through this and producing it without actually being here. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate your business. Please give our YouTube channel a look and a subscribe. And shoot, if you're listening to this and don't subscribe to K-StateOnline, maybe get that as a subscription. We'd love to have you. We don't have any fancy deals going on right now. I'm not going to mislead you. It just kind of are what we are. But you do get 7 days free if you sign up and check out the site. If you don't like it, cancel, and I'll say sorry. Appreciate your time listening to this. Thanks for being on K-StateOnline. Thanks for listening to the KSO show. Please do tell your friends.